I'm Grace Kashanja, a psychologist at Chiromalen Medical Center, now known as Chiromo Mental Health Hospital, and I have been practicing there for about 3 years now. And we focus on mental health and psychiatric disorders of all kinds. And thank you for having us over.
Very welcome. Next, please.
Hello, my name is Nancy Wanjiru Kabiru. I am a mental health champion, the founder and lead psychologist at Hisia Psychology Consultants. Thank you.
Karibu sana.
Hi guys, my name is Makin Njui. I'm a third year student at Moi University pursuing a degree in information sciences, and I'm also a sports journalist. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much to my panel, and we are going to dive into the matters today. So who can tell me what is mental illness and the difference between mental illness and mental disorder? Any of you can start.
I was having a discussion with Grace off camera, and I actually happened to ask her what's the difference between an illness and a disorder, and she told me that an illness is treatable, but a disorder is something that probably has no treatment whatsoever. So with that in mind, I think that mental illness is some sort of like abnormality in terms of the thoughts that you make, but are kind of treatable. For example, PSTDs and drug and substance abuse. But for a disorder is probably maybe something that you're born with. You know, you can't control that. Maybe it's a disability or something. And I think mental disorder is some sort of like mental disability. Yes.
All right, thank you very much, Mark. Nancy, Grace, who wants to take up the actual definition of mental illness and mental disorder? What's the difference?
Thank you. He mentioned that they had a discussion, so I wanted to hear what Grace would say.
Yeah.
Then I can top it up.
Okay. Great.
Thank you.
Well, I think he confused it a little bit in that it's not necessarily something that you're born with. It's something that can be in your genes, and it comes up somewhere within your lifetime, but it's something that you'll have for the rest of your life when it's a disorder. Yes, an illness can be treatable, but more often than not, sometimes, especially in the mental health field, illness and disorder are used interchangeably. Yeah. So you can't really draw the line that this is an illness and this is a disorder. When it comes to mental health, they can be used interchangeably, and they often are. But in other fields, then there's that, which is a difference.
Hi, Nancy, now tell us.
So a mental illness is a disorder that affects your state of mind, your behavior, your thinking pattern, and even your cognitive, how you recognize things. So that is what we call a mental illness. So if we talk about behavior, sometimes you may end up behaving irrationally or in a way that people don't consider normal. If we talk about cognitively, you are not able to pick up normal senses, or you sense them as different. They may threaten you, and to somebody else it does not threaten you. And your emotions, how you react to that. You may find something that we consider normal and would laugh about. Somebody who has a mental disorder may take offense of that situation. So that is what we call a mental illness. Yeah.
All right, and what about disorder? Because I have had Grace and Mark mention about it either being genetic or hereditary.
You can have a mental illness genetically. It can occur because probably a parent had it. So as Grace said, it happens, we talk of the two terms interchangeably, meaning the same thing. So you could inherit it from your parents, or it could happen as a change in the environment. So you acquire it because your body or your mind is not able to articulate the threat well. Yeah.
All right, Sawa, thank you very much. And so let's go into our next question. What generally causes mental illness or mental disorder in this state? I know we've mentioned, but can you dive a bit deeper? Mark, would you like to start based on your understanding?
Yes. Since we've said that a mental illness is something that you may suffer from, maybe given the day-to-day experiences that you face. I think one example, given that I'm a student, is an academic-oriented course to mental illness. What I mean is that, for instance, you may find out that you may be given a project to kind of do and earn marks so that you may eventually graduate and go live your life out there. But you find out that sometimes things may not go the way you want them to go, and you may end up finding yourself in an unavoidable situation where you're not graduating and all that. And maybe your parents back at home were expecting the big news that you are going to graduate, they were going to bring their family members to come celebrate with you, and they find out that that's not the case. So you find yourself in a situation where you're suffering from stress like that, and eventually I think that may be one cause of a mental illness. Maybe you may turn to drugs as a way of calming yourself down. And since we know that drug and substance abuse is a form of mental illness, that may be one cause that may lead to another, and that may have catastrophic effects on your life.
Okay. All right, Sasa, but I also feel like in school, due to different understanding abilities, people tend to feel, or students tend to feel very pressured, and not only in university, all the way from when children are very young. And that is why, sorry to say, I do not quite advocate for the Kenyan system, the 844, because they only focus on what they know is right. They don't, it's like they didn't go through child psychology when they are teaching. Sorry to say, I have my credentials as a teacher, so I will know. Hiya, Grace or Nancy, tell us something.
I like what he said. So he pointed out two things. One being stress, two being addiction, because addiction can lead to a mental illness and stress can lead to a mental illness. So one fact we all need to know is that 1 in every 4 people that you see at any one given time may be suffering from a mental health illness, meaning this is an ordinary thing. So the cause is within our limit. It is the everyday stressor that causes mental health challenges. So someone could have a mental health illness because they've gone through a traumatic incident. That could be a loss of a loved one, witnessing an accident or terrorist attack happening. You could go through a mental illness because you have work challenge, or you have school challenge, or you have marital challenge, or relationship challenges that can cause one to have mental illness. You could have you could get mental health illness because you've been diagnosed with chronic illness, so that information is hard for you to digest, or you have to live with that condition. You could go through a mental health illness because you've experienced a sudden loss. Especially now during COVID-19, we know so many people have lost their jobs or their sources of income, and they are going through so much stress. We have situations where life changes, like you get pregnant and you had not planned to conceive, so you don't know how you're going to cope with it, so you could end up going through depression. So the causes of mental health illness are so many, and I'm sure Grace will help me with the rest that I've not mentioned.
All right, thank you very much, Nancy. Grace, endelea.
I found that her description of what mental health or what the causes of mental illness are all about, because she was quite comprehensive into the varying aspects of it. And basically what I'd like all of us to remember, even as we're having this conversation, that we're talking about health in general, not just mental health. When we're talking about health, it's the absolute and total functioning of one individual being able to cope with everything that's happening in their life. Them being not just physically healthy, like you wake up and you're feeling healthy as a whole, but also being able to function at work, being able to function socially within your social groupings, being able to function at work. I said at work, I said socially, also spiritually is also a factor. So basically think of you as an individual and all the facets that you have around you. If they are all okay, if you're okay in all of them and there's none that is giving you stress and there's none that is bothering you, then you're someone that we can say is well and mentally well, because all those aspects affect your mental health. So if any of them is not at 100% functional level, then we can say that you're mentally healthy. It means that there's something that is bothering you at the back of your mind, which is affecting your mental health. Yeah, just as a summary.
All right, Sawa, thank you very much. Now we have, I think you have also mentioned a bit of the triggers, which are work, social life, education, stress, trauma. illness, chronic illness, you know. So the next thing is, how do you identify someone who has mental illness? And yes, let's first answer that, because first of all, I could be a very, very outspoken person, but when I'm alone, I am not okay. But when I'm out here, which happens to be the case with actually most people that I know, let me use, for example, depression. People who are going through depression, they are always happy. All right? And then now, but when they come back alone, or when they're with their now extremely loved ones, that's when you're like, hey, what's going on? So how do you identify some of these mental illnesses? And again, I'm gonna start all the way from Mark to Endelea Hivi.
In my opinion, there is one key term that I think about when you tell me your question, when you ask me a question, sorry. And I think that's that word is called normal. You know, yes, you may be used to living with someone, working with someone, or knowing someone, and of course, given that you've spent some time with this person, you may end up in a situation where you know what he does, what she does, what habits she or he usually does. But then it comes to a point where you find what she or he was used to doing is not what this person is now doing at all. Maybe you find out that maybe he or she is turning up to work late, coming to class late, or maybe the things that you are used to doing together, maybe you're not doing them anymore. Maybe when you're trying to talk to the guy or the person, maybe the way he's replying to your conversations is not maybe how you're used to talking with a guy. Maybe he's emotional and all that. So I think when you see that this person isn't behaving normally, I think that's one way of knowing that this person is not quite there yet in terms of mental capacity and stuff.
All right, so all right, thank you very much, Mark. Next, Nancy.
I like how he's explained because it's he's touched about everything. So maybe the only thing I would add is someone who is going through a mental health challenge, it's causing them distress, and it's causing the environment, be you or their functionality, distress. So you know what is normal and you know what is abnormal. You can tell they are behaving abnormally. And then you need to also understand what stage of development they are at, so that you can be able to pick on whether they are going or achieving their milestone. So if they are not able to achieve their milestone, then they could easily be having some mental health challenges. So you find that you may realize the simple things would be if someone has all of a sudden high moods, like if you're an introvert, so now you've all of a sudden become a person of high, extroverted, high moods, then that is not normal. That's not how you normally function, meaning it's a coping mechanism of something you're running away from, and you can feel it. The individual usually can tell the distress, but they cannot be able to pinpoint that they're actually suffering from a challenge. The second thing is, if it is an extrovert, they become introverted, so they have extreme low moods. You could tell if someone is forgetful, is not able to accomplish what they set to accomplish, or they talk highly, extremely highly, and they cannot be able to achieve what they've said that they will, or they develop addiction tendencies, and this could be drugs and substance, or they could end up maybe engaging in illicit behaviors. So you find if it is a gentleman, now all of a sudden he wants to be in the company of so many ladies and promising them forever. Or if it is a lady, now all of a sudden she wants the company of the guys. If it is a child, they could act out, so they have anger issues, and even an individual, a grown-up, could have anger issues. So you can tell this person, the reaction to the trigger is extreme, so definitely they are not able to process that the issue they are going through. So anger issues. Someone could, when they are sleeping, when they go to bed, they are not able to fully sleep through the night.
Yeah.
So maybe they wake up because they are in distress or they are experiencing some nightmares. Someone could start talking to themselves. So they make up stories, or they imagine they have people around them whom they are talking about, talking to, or their voices telling them what to do. So they are being controlled. So those are some of the things we can talk about as causes of mental health illness. Yeah.
Now, but before you talk, Grace, but now most of the things you've mentioned probably happen to an individual when they are alone, especially the voices. Or you'll see somebody wearing earphones and you think they are singing, but they're actually not.
Yes.
You know, so how do you help such a person, Grace? How do you, because you also wouldn't want to put them in a position where they feel like they're being pushed to talk or to share, but you're also just trying to be there for them as a friend. Yeah. How do you do that?
Okay. Let me just add to something that they may not have mentioned as to what are the red flags or the danger signs that for us all to be on the lookout for. In addition to what they've said, there's also if a person is a danger to themselves or other people. So this can be noted in the speech and the way they're behaving around them. You may hear people starting to say goodbye, starting to clear, like keep their lives in order, or actually having self-harming behavior, or doing things that would be a danger to themselves or to other people. That's also a red sign when it comes to signs of a mental illness or the things to look out for. Now, with regards to how you help these people, one, it depends on who it is that we're talking about. More often than not, you'll find that the people who we're seeing these signs with are people who we know. Like, say for example, I know you, Sylvia, I know the kind of person that you're on a day-to-day, which means that when I start seeing these changes in your behavior, these changes in how you're interacting with the people around you, I'll be able to know. So having that conversation early enough, checking up on the people around you is one of the ways to do it. Because sometimes no one knows exactly how to ask for help. So having this conversation with people, what we are doing right now is actually a really good way. Because then we're starting to let the people know, let the youth know that these are things that happen. This is what you know, this is how you know that things are not okay. So having a conversation that starts with, how are you doing? And if the person goes like, fine, you can definitely go further and go, how are you exactly doing? Fine is too general. Use a feeling word. Take note of the people, like have that conversation often enough so that if someone tells you, hey, I'm not okay, take that seriously. Go deeper into where it is making you not okay. What can I do to help? Do you need to speak to someone? Because we do have people around us who are trained. So having that conversation with the people around you is a great point to start. Because the sooner we start having these conversations, the sooner more people get help. Not everyone has to end up at the point of, if it's addiction, losing their job, losing their family, dropping out of school, before you go like, hey boss, you've been drinking too much. Hey boss, that video is smoking up, inapeleka mbaya. It doesn't have to get to the point where this person gets admitted to a rehab. They can get help sooner than that. Doesn't get to the point where someone is trying to end their life before we normalize this conversation. So talking about it is the best way to help this person at the very beginning.
All right. Is there anything any of you would like to add?
I'd like to say self-control, because sometimes there's some things that we do, maybe worldly pleasures and things like that. And one gift that the Holy Spirit gave to us was the gift of self-control. And I think the moment you learn to control your pleasures, I think we'll not get to a point where you're getting addicted to something. And when you're not addicted to something, it means you won't end up being in an unavoidable situation like that. So I think the moment we learn the art of self-control, I think we'll be home in trouble.
Okay, let's assume this person does not believe in God. How do you help this person? And don't tell me self-control, because from what I understand, some of these illnesses take a while before they manifest themselves. You could have gone through abuse as a child and your relatives told you, laugh it away, usilie, you'll be fine, you'll be fine. But then when you become an adult, that's when you're like, wait, siko sawa. How do you go about that, Nancy?
There is how you perceive yourself. If we take away self-control, how do you perceive yourself? There are those of us who know my perception of myself is that I have to be a leader. So you know those people. There are those who know I cannot take up a leadership role because I go through anxiety. So I will play in the middle, or I will be a follower. So it's your self-perception. Values is another important thing. What do you value in your life? How have you been brought up to you see the things that you value? Those are also important, because someone who is in distress, and I'm sure Grace will agree, they no longer perceive their values as important, or they think that they have reached the end of their wits. So that is another thing. Then having good relationships with people around you, not seeing yourself as a victim, because most people who won't talk about what they are going through is because they have had an experience previously, and maybe when they try to express themselves, they were not perceived as positively as they would have wanted. So knowing whom to trust and whom to talk to. Sometimes a problem talked about is half solved. So I concur with Grace and I concur with him. So when we learn to speak out, because without speaking out we cannot be able to tell you're suffering, or we would probably be so afraid to say that you're suffering. Learn how to speak and whom to confide in. That can also help. So those are my pointers.
All right, Grace.
A really big one that we also need to learn as a society and to really keep in check is the families. We all come from families, whether it's the family that you are born into, the family that you choose to have, which is your friends, the people that you interact with on a day-to-day. The support from those people are also really key. And those people are the ones who actually ensure or help you know that things are off. And they're also the people that are going to guide you into getting yourself back to 100%. So this is a conversation that we really need to have even at that point. Being able to be there for your people, being able to be there for your friends, being able to be there for your siblings, for your parents even, and parents for their children. So that social support is very key all around. And in addition to that, also, in addition to the self-awareness aspect, the basic day-to-day activities that you can do to help you become more aware of yourself and even more in touch with everything that is happening around you. Things like what we call self-care. You know, those things that you do that make you feel good about yourself, all those, engaging in them, whether it's a conversation, whether it's taking a hot shower, whether it's just having some time away from your phone and not talking to people. Whatever you've got to do to protect your own mental health, whatever you've got to do to protect, to stay sane, whatever sane is to you, do that. Yeah.
All right, but I think right now I think when self-care is something we need to dive into a bit deeper, because I might enjoy playing video games, but I can't get out of bed.
Yeah.
Yes. So we won't dive into that today. We're going to do that in our next episode. And so before we finish, could you kindly mention to me, or for me, what are the most general types of mental illness that affect people day to day, or mental illness, mental disorders that affect or are now coming up? Because I know depression is disturbing a lot of us. I know PTSD is disturbing a lot of us. I know about anxiety. Kindly mention, Mark.
As a student, most of my colleagues or most of other students out there suffer from depression. And because of what I mentioned earlier, maybe you have missing marks and the lecturer isn't willing to help you out and all that. And I also think another thing that also affects students or my peers is drug and substance abuse. I mentioned it again earlier. And it's simply due to the fact that maybe something like marijuana is a drug that is very common among students, and it's obviously a pleasure to them. And the moment that pleasure becomes an addiction, it's very difficult to get out of. So I think that those are the two examples of mental illnesses that my peers may face.
Okay.
Yes.
Nancy?
There is anxiety disorders that someone could have. Depression, you mentioned. Post-traumatic stress disorder because of going through trauma. There are other deeper conditions like schizophrenia that you have to live with and you have to be under medication. I don't know if I've mentioned about addiction disorders, and there are different types of addiction. So depending on what you choose to cope with at that time. Yeah, that's what I can think of right now. Yeah, I'll pass on to Grace.
I think you all have been very comprehensive onto the most common ones that we're seeing on a day-to-day, especially the anxieties and the depression and the substance use disorders, especially among the youth. But then the one that we may not be very cautious of is that all these may come, or especially when we're looking at anxiety and depression, can come as a result of other medical conditions. So currently we have all the histories of cancer of various kinds, these long-term conditions like diabetes and hypertension, more often than not come with a mental illness as part of it, such that you find a person becomes depressed, a person may develop anxiety due to the illness that they're already living with. So that is also another common one that we also need to address also among the population.
All right, Sawa. Thank you very much for joining us today. We intend on having this conversation again for our next episode, and you're very welcome to be part of our panel next time. My name is Sylvia Waithira Kuria, and I am glad to be your host. See you next week. Thank you.